Hello everyone and welcome to this newest edition of Aeronautica. This is Remlace from 40k Theories.
And hello everyone, this is Fiora. How are you all doing?
And today we're going to be taking a look at the quote-unquote aircraft of the Tyrande Hive Fleets.
Yes we are. I do have an announcement and a disclaimer to go over before we start. So the announcement first is that this series is on hold until mid-July. This is due to conventions that I will be attending in June, my time with my other half in England until the second week of July, and a convention the second week of July as soon as I get back. Basically, I get off the plane and then get on another one. I'm going to be at Anime 2017 The Hague in Amsterdam from June 8th through the 11th to present adult panels and events there. I will be at the Bovington Tank Fest on Sunday, June 25th, and also be giving a small presentation on the Leopard 1 as well as an attendee there. And lastly, I will be presenting panels and events at TrotCon in Columbus, Ohio on July 13th through the 16th, presenting panels and events there. So until I get back, I kind of don't have access to the wind tunnel nor the professors and graduate students who've been helping me get this series together for all of you. I apologize for this, folks, but it looks like the next episode may not be until July 26th. It may be the week before on the 19th. I don't know yet. But I always prefer to do it right or as close to the same standard as I can, or delay it until I can do that. My inner Slaneshi perfectionist at work. Disclaimer-wise, same disclaimer applies to all these videos. I'm going to try these versus vehicles as follows. I will see how well they can potentially fly, what they can do to maneuver and avoid the damage. Their armament is going to be my next step in determining what a flying vehicle is capable of. And lastly, I want to see how well they react to hits. During this, I will look at their utility and how physically possible the claims around their speed, maneuverability, weapons, and other capabilities are versus what is represented by the statistics available, stories surrounding the vehicles, and descriptions of how they work. For testing, each model is taken from a store, or we build a replica using foam bodies with plastic plates and then place it into a wind tunnel to get lift-to-drag ratios based at certain speeds in 1/40th scale, the same scale reported by Games Workshop to be Warhammer 40k. This was done at the University of Delaware Department of Engineering. Unlike the aircraft, either have an actual tabletop model here, or we have 3D printed them as I described using foam and plastic pieces before placing them into the wind tunnel. You can calculate your own drag at home using 0.5 times the surface area of the direction of travel. That is to say, the surface area it is pushing through the wind, the density of the object times drag coefficient times the velocity at which it is traveling. The lift-to-drag ratios I present are the average lift-to-drag ratios at cruising speed or at the specific speed that I mention in these videos. No, I am not allowed to record, as that requires $400 to use their camera equipment in order for replacement of the equipment once it's burnt out. Usually a camera lens in a wind tunnel lasts about an hour to an hour and a half, and then they replace it because it's cheaper and easier to replace than it is to constantly repair the camera, because it takes about 4 hours to get the scratches off the lens versus 10 minutes to replace the lens. Understand I may be inaccurate, but I have checked these calculations 4 times per episode. Furthermore, all of this is a theory, assuming these vehicles could actually exist in our world. So please enjoy the science, and if I'm wrong, I'm a scientist. I'm allowed to be wrong, and I will admit when I'm wrong.
So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the first creature in question, the Harpy. Now, the Harpy has a long, sinuous body with massive, leathery wings and a broad, armoured-plated head. To better harness the thermal currents, the body of the creature is hollow, resulting in it being relatively fragile compared to similar-sized Tyranic creatures. However, it does have superior agility in the air than even most technologically advanced fighter craft can manage. The undersides of the creatures are covered in bloated cysts that can rain down spore mines onto luckless prey. It can also emit an ear-piercing shriek that can rupture eardrums and is excruciatingly painful, or even fatal, and at the very least can cause disorientation. The creature may be equipped with twin-linked Stranglethorn cannons, heavy venom cannons, or scything talons, according to the tactical needs of the Hive Fleet.
This is a weaponized bat. The wings are sufficiently large enough to generate lift, and assuming the bones are hollow as is described in the lore, it will have no trouble flying. It has a lift-to-drag ratio of around 0.1 floor. It flies exactly like a bat flying at 214 kilometers an hour.
That's a fast bat.
It can achieve this in level flight. It does not need anything else to do this. I would assume in a pure diving scenario, it could possibly achieve speeds of in excess of 400 kilometers an hour if it began diving from 400 feet, before it would be at risk of actually causing physical damage to its body. That's not bad for a biological creature. Must stress, for a biological creature. World War II fighter craft, of course, exceeded 500 to 800 kilometers per hour, so it kind of isn't capable of keeping up with them. It's more like a biplane in terms of maneuverability and dogfighting prowess, though, as it can stop and hover, something that every other aircraft we've gone over doesn't have the ability to do. And it can twist its body in roughly, estimated by the biologist I talked to, in about 4 seconds into a 180 and begin accelerating in the opposite direction it was just traveling. Going from full speed of 214 to 180 and going back the other direction in 4 seconds means it only took it roughly 18 meters to turn around at 45 degrees a second. And this by no means is applying over huge amounts of G-forces to it, because the creature is only traveling at 214 kilometers an hour. It's more than possible for it to survive that kind of a turn. I can see why it avoids direct confrontation, though. Due to needing hollow bones to fly and their distinct lack of armor plating on the underbelly, these creatures will be vulnerable in any form of prolonged fighting. In addition to this, its massive wings are very thin and can be easily penetrated or damaged by incoming fire. This means the creature would perform incredibly poorly against any form of dedicated anti-aircraft. Even a platoon of guys just pointing their guns up in the air and firing at it are very likely to bring it down. And firepower-wise, it's clearly a strict anti-infantry weapon. The Stranglethorn cannons and heavy venom cannons are capable of doing large amounts of damage to infantry and light armor, but a dedicated bunker, a tank, or any various armored vehicle we've gone over in our 3 series, even the armored aircraft that it would face against the Orcs or the Space Marines, would just shrug off its attacks. As far as its shriek, you have to remember that in an air-to-air scenario, the shriek would be useless, because most aircraft are traveling faster than the speed of sound, so it can shriek all at once. The aircraft are outrunning it. As far as against ground targets, the shriek would be incredibly effective against exposed infantry, but once you put them into a vehicle of some sort, the shriek would be drastically diminished based upon the armor thickness of the vehicle. Estimated that even a Chimera, should they activate their chemical sealant, would be more than able to be enough protection to protect you from a shriek, even if the creature was standing next to the vehicle. So all in all, it flies. It has some firepower, but don't expect it to take out a tank or an Orc aircraft.
But in regards to infantry, though, it's pretty good. So let's see if they can do better. The Harridan. Now, the Harridan is a absolutely massive flying creature, equipped with 2 biocannons and a pair of scything talons for swooping low and slashing up tanks. Being a living creature and relying on wings rather than jet engines, the Harridan cannot match an aircraft for straight-line speed, but its live twisting body is far more maneuverable, allowing it to twist and turn to avoid enemy fire. The Harridans act as brood mothers to smaller gargoyles, which are a very small flying creature based on the Gaunt genus. Now, it's thought that the gargoyles lack endurance for very long distance movement, so they have been known to hitch a lift on the Harridan using their hooks and claws to attach themselves. The Harridan has no legs or feet, and because of this it's been theorized that once airborne, it can never land, although some believe that it can slither on its belly like a snake. Now, this creature is around 5.5 meters high and has a maximum speed of 200 kilometers an hour, with a weight ranging from anywhere between 11 to 62.5 tons.
Okay, everyone. So first I have to go over a bit of a story. We have Mr. Harry Lear to thank for loaning this one to us. And I do make everyone sign waivers when they loan me a model, so that I don't necessarily get held responsible. This is the first model in this series that has been loaned to me that has been destroyed in the process. We recovered 93 pieces of what was left after it impacted the ballistic shielding when one of the clamps failed in the wind tunnel. I did do a fundraiser on Saturday, however, and we raised enough money not only to donate $155 to StackUp.org, but also to replace Mr. Lear's Harridan and commission the store staff to paint it for him. Mr. Lear, while not happy that the original has been destroyed, has thanked us for the replacement and said if he cannot reassemble the pieces into a working model by the time I get back from Europe in July, he will give me the pieces to hand out to folks as a thank you. So, yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Lear, for your sacrifice. We very much appreciate it here.
That much said, the Harridan actually flies far better than everything Rimlace just stated, and I would have ever expected.
Now, is that so?
Using biology and talking to a biologist, it generates the same amount of lift as the 900 horsepower engines on the Boeing 737. Each generating more than enough lift to get it into the air, equal to a next generation 800 series engine on an airliner. When the clamps failed, the creature did not actually fall to the ground, it went upwards. It went into the air at 22 kilometers an hour and rose a total of 1.7 meters higher than where we had actually had it clamped down, and it only had 2 meters of distance to cover before it smashed into the ballistic shielding.
Wow.
That gives it a lift-to-drag ratio of 0.19. The same ratio, or damn near close to it, as the Wright brothers' plane that achieved flight at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
Not bad for a flying snake.
This lift-to-drag ratio is achieved at 880 kilometers an hour when we scale it up from 1/40th scale.
How far, sorry?
880.
DL.
We could do no further testing on it directly, however, instead we only have math, so everything at this point is pure theory based on math with no practical application in the wind tunnel. But this may actually be the first creature to break the first biological creature to break the sound barrier in level flight. In theory, with its wings generating that much lift and with the strength and rate at which it is supposed to be able to flap its wings, it can reach speeds of 1,486 kilometers an hour, or Mach 1.3 in level flight.
That's a very fast flying snake.
The Imperium estimation of 200 kilometers an hour is not only woefully inadequate, it goes to show just how much lift and momentum this thing can generate with a wingspan of 38.4 meters. Next is the fact that it's biological. It can hover. Like, it can just stop and hover in its place, which allows it to execute a 180-degree turn due to the snake-like design of its body in roughly 2.2 seconds. That's 61 degrees a second if it's hovering, to spin around and go the opposite direction. No fighter aircraft ever created could match it in maneuverability. In a pure turning dogfight, you will lose. Not to mention the fact that since it's based upon wings, it does take it a bit to get up to maximum speed and to slow itself down. But we don't honestly know how long it can maintain it. Like, I don't know what its metabolic rate is, and I have no way of directly testing its muscle strength or its muscular endurance. So we can estimate that it can fly about as long as most birds, which is 4 to 6 hours of long-range flight, or in short bursts for up to 20 minutes. But after that, it's probably going to have to land.
What about taking into consideration gliding?
That is with gliding, because
Okay.
what most birds do in long-range flight, allow me to describe this, is they flap their wings about once every 37 seconds. The rest of the time, they maintain their height via air currents, particularly if they can find warm thermal air currents that push them up, as well as by simply gliding on the air. There comes a point where they do have to flap their wings to maintain altitude and speed, but they are actually pretty lazy creatures.
And there's going to be no shortage of air currents over a battlefield where there's going to be wreckage of tanks burning, giving off fire.
Wrecking of tanks burning will provide thermals up to 6,000 feet, which means at low altitude fighting, it has no trouble maintaining its flight patterns or even getting an increase in speed from the upcoming warm air. Please remember that warm air automatically rises and therefore automatically pushes upward anything that's actually flying. This is why it's significantly easier to maintain flight over, say, Florida than it is to maintain flight over Siberia. The wind is thicker, the wind is easier for the plane to get lift from in comparison to the freezing cold that you would experience there. That said, firepower-wise, we went over this in the Tyranid Blitzkrieg episode as well as in the Man-at-Arms episode. It packs similar firepower to what I would expect to come out of a Hive Tyrant. I have seen variants equipped with an Impaler cannon, for instance, which is designed to fire a solid chunk of bone at 1,200 meters per second. This would have plenty of penetrating power to easily punch through a Leman Russ tank and have the same fragmentation and splinter effects you would expect from a standard kinetic penetrator fired from a modern 120mm cannon. Most other Tyranid's weapons it can mount would prove to be very, very effective against infantry, but it packs one capability that other aircraft we've gone over so far don't. It can choose to grapple. Considering it's flying at Mach 1.3 at its maximum estimated speed, it would be able to literally barrel roll over and grab onto another aircraft and rip it apart. No aircraft that we've gone over so far has any defense mechanism for having something actually grab it.
So this thing's going full-blown Rodan on my other aircraft.
Its wings, however, are its weakness as well. They are incredibly large and vulnerable. The thin membranes are penetratable even by regular stubber bullet rounds. I would even expect a modern M16 to be able to punch holes in them. And every single bit of damage they suffer is going to lessen its ability to fly and eventually restrict it to gliding only until there are enough holes in damage that it simply starts falling to the ground or stalling out outright.
I suppose in that case it would depend on how fast the regeneration of the creature is.
It would, but I could imagine a Imperial Guard Hydra opening up on it, and if it got a second burst that was direct hits into the wings, it would just fall.
Yeah,
because you would shred half the wing. You would possibly even completely rip a wing completely off from that amount of firepower being hurled at it. So any dedicated anti-aircraft is going to tear it apart. Most air-to-air combat, however, trains us to aim for center mass, which is why in air-to-air combat it should be relatively fine, since it will probably get hit on the armor plating as opposed to having its wings chewed through. We also don't know how, I went over this, we don't know how long it can maintain this speed or how much food, rest, and water it requires between bursts. This also makes its flight range incredibly limited to modern aircraft, able to fly only 4 to 6 hours before requiring rest, while modern aircraft can fly for hours or in some cases days with air-to-air refueling and the pilot's ability simply to eat a ration and continue flying. Overall, it's a good defensive short-range flyer. Don't expect this thing to stay up there for long, and if it gets into a prolonged battle, it's going to have its wings ripped off and hit the ground.
So moving on then. Oh, carry on.
It's also the fastest biological form of life that could have been designed to fly.
Which is still in the precedent of achievement regardless.